2023 Eugene City Council public hearing. Tonight, the mayor is on business in Washington, D.C. for the city, and so as council president, I will be running this public hearing. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the instructions listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meeting materials webpage. There is one public hearing on tonight's agenda. Please note that members of the public who sign up to testify may speak only on the topic that is the subject of the stated hearing. For those wishing to testify during the public hearing, please fill out the request to speak form available on the city's public webcast and meeting materials webpage and at the entrance to the room for those in person, if you have not already done so. These requests to speak forms will be used to generate the order of the speakers and correctly enter speakers' names into the public record. We'll accept requests to speak forms until 5:35 p.m. For those joining the meeting by phone that wish to provide testimony and are unable to complete the request to speak online form, press *9 and the last 3 digits of your phone number will be added to the speaker's queue. As a reminder, the City Council's meeting rules of conduct include 1, no flags, signs, loud or disruptive language, noise, or conduct that obstructs the business of the council. 2, please keep the room quiet and respectful for all speakers. 3, you are welcome to wave your hands in silent support. Additionally, we encourage those that are ill or who have had close contact with others that are ill to join our meetings remotely rather than in person. It doesn't help those who are already here, obviously. We also encourage attendees to spread out with the meeting space and wear a mask if you'd be comfortable doing so. We have some available in the back of the room if you need one. Tonight's public hearing is an ordinance concerning the Skinner Butte height limitation area, amending section 9.6715 and figure 9.6715 paren 3 of the Eugene Code 1971. I will open the public hearing on an ordinance concerning the Skinner's Butte height limitation area, amending the sections I just said. This meeting's now called to order. Sorry, I hit that a little hard. Assistant City Manager, would you please introduce the topic?
Derry, who I believe is joining us remotely, but wasn't able to be here in person. The ordinance tonight is a city-initiated amendment to the Skinner's Butte height limitation area. It is intended to allow for additional development opportunities in our downtown. The amendment would allow for an additional 30 feet in building height for 6 parcels located along East 5th Avenue between Willamette Street and Pearl Street.
Thank you. As mentioned, this item is a public hearing on the proposed ordinance that would amend the Skinner Butte height limitation area to allow the additional development opportunities downtown. City Council's role in the process is to approve with modifications, or deny the application. The decision-making process for this application is considered quasi-judicial, so we will use a quasi-judicial format for the public hearing. To start, do any councilors need to disclose any bias, conflicts of interest, or ex parte communications or abstentions pursuant to EC 9.7065?
Yes. I recently met with Sarah Means from OB Companies, and during that meeting, we briefly discussed the need for housing in downtown and the proposed Skinner Butte height limitation, which would allow for additional housing on a property owned by OB Companies that's expected to be developed with housing.
Thank you, Councilor Leach. Are there anybody else? Councilor Evans.
Yeah, I had a similar meeting with Sarah Means and with Brian Obie on the same topic.
Thank you, Councilor Evans. Anyone else? Okay, I also want to disclose that I've had a meeting with Sarah Means from Obie Company following a similar conversation about housing in our downtown, what it takes to develop. So with that, have staff received any challenges to the counselors' impartiality submitted pursuant to Eugene Code Section 9.7065, paren 5? Yes. Council.
Thank you, Council President Groves. I'm not aware of any challenges, but I do want to make sure that it is made clear that anyone testifying tonight has the right to address and rebut the substance of the ex parte contacts that were disclosed by Councilors Leach, Groves, and Evans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Testimony presented at the public hearing should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria or other criteria that the speaker believes apply to the decision. The applicable approval criteria for this code amendment are located in Eugene Code Section 9.8065. The full the full text of the code section is available in the findings attached to the AIS for the public hearing. The failure of anyone to raise an issue accompanied by the statement or evidence sufficient to afford the city council and parties an opportunity to respond will preclude appeal on this issue. For quasi-judicial proceedings, once the public hearing is open, speakers will be able to be called in the following order. 1, those in support, including the applicant. 2, those with a neutral position, and 3, those opposed. I'll now open the public hearing. I get to do it twice. Does the applicant wish to make a statement?
Good evening, City Council. Staff has no additional presentation to make at this time. I will point out that we have collected additional public testimony since you were last updated at the middle of today. We'll make sure that makes its way to you, and we'll have updates to the AIS for your action hearing, action item scheduled for February 13th. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff moderator.
If you have signed up to speak via Zoom, please take this time to ensure that your screen name in Zoom includes your last name and matches the name you used to sign up to speak. We will announce 2 speakers' names at a time. If you are providing testimony via Zoom and you are the next speaker, we will promote you to panelist status. When it is your turn to speak, you can unmute and then turn on your camera if you wish. If you are announced as the next speaker and physically in the room, please move to the seat in the front row designated for the next speaker. When it is your turn, you may come to the podium. When you are called to speak, please state your name, address, and whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposed code amendment before beginning your comments. You will have 3 minutes to speak. If you are watching the meeting, the timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 3 minutes. For those that have connected to the meeting via phone and don't have the benefit of seeing the timer, please be aware that your microphone will be muted at the 3-minute mark. Please note that screen sharing or displaying information on the screen is not allowed, and any misuse of the platform or violation of the council's code of conduct will result in immediate termination of speaking privileges. So we will share the speaking list at the beginning of each. We will start with those who are speaking in support of. We have 3 speakers. We will start with Sarah Means, followed by Betsy Schultz, and then Samantha Roberts. And we will share the neutral and then opposed at the beginning of those sections.
Good evening, City Councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to provide public testimony in support of the proposed code amendment. My name is Sarah Means, and I'm here representing Obie Companies. Properties included in this file are part of the Market District and Ward 7. Obie Companies is excited to continue the work of creating development opportunities in the downtown area. We believe strongly in creating vibrancy in downtown Eugene. Providing housing opportunities is a critically important step in creating the space that we all want. We are eager to build on the momentum created by Market Alley and the Gordon Lofts with expanded residential opportunities in the Market District. Affirming the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approving this application would be a significant step in that direction for the subject properties. Recently, a zone change was approved for several of the properties included in this application. The zone change allows for a mixed-use development, including high-density residential use. The working plan for these properties includes mixed-use buildings with retail and commercial on the ground floor and residential uses on the floors above. The additional 30 feet in height, as suggested in the code amendment language, could capture a net increase of between 75 and 100 residential units based on early conceptual plans. This increased density is essential in meeting the need and demand for residential units within the city of Eugene and is certainly consistent with the city's downtown and comprehensive plans. We also want to acknowledge the proximity of these properties to historic buildings. The Oregon Electric Station and the Southern Pacific Passenger Depot are important buildings in this community and to OB Companies. Our plans acknowledge and preserve these buildings. In fact, they are critical to the success of this proposed development moving forward and will play an important role. We look forward to the opportunity ahead that will re-energize these historic spaces. Again, we believe the proposed code amendment is consistent with city's downtown and comprehensive plans, along with the clear and urgent need for additional housing units. We urge you to support the proposed amendment. Thank you for your consideration and your service to the city of Eugene.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, we'll hear from Betsy. Betsy, go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, City Councilors. Thank you so much for the time to be able to present to you today. I wear many hats when I talk to you all. Tonight, though, I am representing Better Housing Together, as you know, a group of over 50 community partners coming around and supporting the position of housing affordability, diversity, and supply in Lane County, but especially in Eugene. We are in a housing crisis. I don't need to remind you all that and all of the details. You are very, very aware of that. And so on behalf of Better Housing Together, we are so grateful that we have a local developer who wants to invest in our community to create quality product that will be a benefit to our community for a long time. We've seen this in Fifth Street over the years, and this new development is incredibly exciting. Downtown is where we believe that real density makes sense. We've talked so much about both affordability, the climate goals that the city has, and for us to meet those and for people to be able to truly afford to live here, density, especially in the downtown core, is where that makes the most sense. In addition to the affordability and the climate piece, I just wanted to point out more housing downtown brings more revenue downtown and more bodies downtown. And that is where both of those two elements are going to help our community solve the issues that we see downtown and are working on fighting from public safety and other issues as well. Just having more revenue, but also more bodies downtown will make a huge difference for that. And lastly, if my understanding is that if we choose to not increase the height with this code amendment, we would lose 100 additional units of housing. And you think about where we have the space in our community for 100 units to go. This is a huge benefit to our community, to downtown. And on behalf of Better Housing Together and our 50 community partners, I respectfully ask for you to support this amendment and move this project forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy. Next, we will hear from Samantha Roberts. Samantha, go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, City Councilors and Assistant City Manager. My name is Samantha Roberts, and I am with the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We represent hundreds of businesses here in the Eugene area that would benefit from additional housing units brought to our downtown especially. As our other speakers have mentioned, housing brings vibrancy, and we're not just looking at housing, we're also looking at economic development opportunity, new businesses that could open, and new impacts to our local area. The proposed changes in front of you are really small when you think about the larger impact that we could have with even just 75 more units or even 100 more units. At the end of the day, we need to relentlessly pursue opportunity to build housing. The codes that we have in front of us today served a purpose for the time that they've been in existence. And sometimes we need to make changes to achieve a greater good. And we find that this is really a greater good. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Samantha. We will now share the list of speakers for the next section.
Oh, yes.
We did not have any speakers signed up to speak in the neutral topic, so we will move on to those who are opposed. We will start with Mary Dower, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
I live at 350 Pearl and I'm opposed to this measure. Part of me realized it's already a done deal. But I wrote a letter to Eugene Mayor Lucy Venus and the city council members, and I've decided I'm going to read it. So I have lived in downtown Eugene for 21 years. And for the last 9 years, I have lived at Yapoa Terrace, the tall senior retirement building at the base of Skinner's Butte. It is a true pleasure to live in such close proximity to the Butte, which I and many others consider to be a jewel of nature right on the northern edge of downtown Eugene. I am writing this letter to voice my opposition to the proposed land use code amendment to the Skinner Butte height limitation area being requested by OB Companies for planned developments on the north and south sides of Fifth Street. The request is for an additional height above the code that was created in 1968 to protect the scenic view of the Butte. I feel that these proposed height extensions for these buildings along Fifth Street are too tall for Fifth Street specifically and too close to the Butte itself. I do realize Eugene's need for housing density and that this is a very exciting development that will increase the vibrancy of our downtown area, which is sorely needed and desired by many of us. This neighborhood directly north of Fifth Street is almost the last historic remnant left of Eugene. Skinner's Butte itself, we locals call it Skinner's, is often a destination for many tourists and visitors. I've even seen a tour bus up there. It is quite scenic and lovely and a daily exercise experience for many people via walking, jogging, and bicycling. The Shelton McMurphy House is a jewel on the Butte, and I fear the new building specifically on the north side of the Butte will block the lovely view of the Shelton McMurphy House from Fifth Street. I feel that allowing buildings taller than the code set in place in 1968, that close to the Butte, would mar the charm of this very unique neighborhood. It's just too close to the Butte. I hate to admit what I'm thinking, but anywhere but here. I've been a frequent visitor to the Fifth Street Public Market area for many years, and I do enjoy having something so lovely nearby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we'll hear from Robin Bloomgarden, followed by Mark Robinowitz.
I remembered to take my mask off this time. Okay. Hi, Robin Bloomgarden, Randy's ward. Let's see. This is about the Skinner Butte height limitation area. We now see the obvious hand of Brian Obie in this proposed change. Already he has taken over the whole 5th to 6th Avenue area that ends at High Street. I'm sure he has future plans to ask for another change for more of his properties along 5th Avenue. When is enough enough? And when will you stop giving him everything he asks for and all the tax breaks? What I see is a takeover of this small, historic, older part of town in order to create a glitzy, high-priced tourist trap, and looks like more upscale housing to come. Nice, quiet 5th Avenue will be towering buildings Sixth Avenue will be towering buildings all along the north side of the street down to Washington Jefferson Park. You barely have any historic buildings left in Eugene and certainly no historic center. Most cities want to have a historic district. What is wrong with Eugene? I wonder how the downtown shop owners feel about all the shoppers heading over to Fifth Avenue and then eventually continuing on to the waterfront area to spend all their cash. You think downtown is a hollow shell now? Stop allowing the destruction of our heritage for the sake of tourism and ghastly university housing with a shelf life of maybe 10 years. Or please remind yourselves of the Crapstone complex and what a piece of junk it is and how not street friendly it ended up being. Is Sixth Avenue going to look the same? I agree that we need more low-income housing, but is that what we're going to get? Why all on a main street? Why not on another street that's not a main street? That's a freeway over there. And P.S., if you have a budget deficit, stop giving tax breaks to builders. Then you won't have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Next, we'll hear from Mark Rabinowitz, followed by William O'Brien. As a reminder, please state your address at the beginning of your testimony.
Mark Rabinowitz. And building skyscrapers downtown, some of the apologists say we need this to avoid expanding the city onto farmland. But the truth is the city wants both. You're planning urban reserves to connect Eugene to Junction City and toward Veneta. And these new high-rises will require more strip mining along the rivers for the rock, for the cement and the concrete. And I think the city has given enough to Mr. Obie. He's not the mayor anymore. And I think he should pay taxes like everybody else. I pay property taxes. Most people who own a home pay property taxes. Why should people be exempt? Especially when we need to pay for schools, fire, police. What this is gentrification. It's destroying existing communities to import out-of-state people, maybe from Arizona or California or the moon or who knows where. And this used to be called Californication. There's also ugliness in the design. We're not putting setbacks on our street fronts anymore and putting up overpriced yuppie housing on a 4-lane almost expressway. That's not the place for residential areas. It's greed. There's no human scale. And any of you who take money from Obie or the other companies that are involved in the electric or plumbing or drywall or anything else should recuse yourself, because that's called corruption. And the city of Eugene supposedly has this great planning department, but there's no attention to design. It's just generic overbuilding. There's no more sense of place. There's no there anymore. When the new Eugene that you all are building could be anywhere. It could be Montana. It could be Massachusetts. There's no sense of place. And when you put up giant walls that block the view of the surrounding area, you won't even know there are mountains nearby. It's not just Skinner Butte or even Spencer Butte. It's just the United States of Generica, and people don't like that. But there's no democracy in this kind of decision. You all have already made your decision. It's rather obvious, just like with the urban reserves. And it's just perfunctory that you're even listening to us. So very disappointed.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we'll hear from William O'Brien, followed by Prem Dawson. As a reminder, please state your address at the beginning of your testimony.
255 High Street. I did a head count of how many high rises are in Eugene, and I got lost because they've all come up in the last 4 or 5 years. I think about 4 years ago, Brian Obie wanted a sign on the Gordon Hotel and went about 30 feet above the limit. or the new limit. This became the new normal. So you want to have something, other buildings by either Brian Obie or other corporations going down to Willamette Street. How many buildings you're going to put up? I don't know. Are you going to have mixed housing there? Are they going to be retail establishments? I have no idea. So do you know what the plans are? I don't know the plans. I just read the paper. I hear it on KLCC, a paragraph in the paper. So let's say there's 10 or 15 high rises on the university. The university isn't accountable to anyone. The average rent is $1,200 a month. I was speaking to some students today about that. So I'm not going to try to figure that out. I don't know if the height variance at the university over there is the same height at what Obie has. So I just think you're moving very fast. And if you decide this in a week or a couple of months, I don't think you're going to solve any problems here. You may get some housing. You desperately need housing, tiny homes. St. Vincent de Paul, they fill the void. Homes for Good, they fill the void too. But right over there, you got basically a de facto homeless shelter. You want to go over there and you watch someone overdose on fentanyl? Well, it happens daily. It happens daily right around the corner here. I just don't see you solving any problems. But I know that going high, going vertical is the way to go. Because no one can even afford a home, hardly. So I'm against it. And I said I was probably against it, but I'm probably against it because what I see downtown, it is essentially sterile. It's university sterile too. You meet nice people, but everyone's caught in their digital world. It's moving too fast. And you're going to have more and more people coming to Eugene because of all the lax drug laws. So quality of living, I don't see it. I don't see it going up. I see it kind of going down. What else? Well, in relation to what you're going to decide whenever you decide it, you got 8 acres of riverfront park. And the university wants 4 acres to build another blasted athletic facility. That could be done in Glenwood.
Thank you, William. Your time has concluded. Next, we'll hear from Prem Dawson, followed by our final speaker, Jim New.
Hi there. I live at 350 Pearl Street. I also live at Yapoa. And for obvious reasons, I think that many people at Yapoa are reluctant to object to the height variance. I know there's a joke in here somewhere, but I wanted to speak today more to the loss of space, open space, and some of the character of the neighborhood that we live in. I understand that right now the property that Mr. Obie will be building on is parking lots. And so that's not exactly a public square or a beautiful park or something like that, but it still is open space. And I agree with some of the previous statements about the way the construction is happening as far as how close the buildings are to the sidewalk, to the street. And I also think it's really important to honor the flavor of Eugene, and we don't see that happening so much anymore. It's something that you can still see in the neighborhood. The shops are brightly colored and they're inviting when you look out there. However, I don't find the buildings, the newer buildings that are coming up, as beautiful, and they're not as well built. So I just wanted to have an opportunity to share that with you folks. I think I speak for a lot of people in our building, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Prem. Next, we will hear from our final speaker, Jim New. As a reminder, please state your address at the beginning of your testimony.
Acting Mayor, City Council, City Manager. My name is Jim New. I live at 3072 Webster Street in Ward 7. Many years ago in Chicago, I took architecture design classes where the instruction emphasized spatial interaction, a basic concept that considers how locations interact with each other in terms of movement and where objects are in relation to something else. Adjacency, overlap, proximity, or shadowing are types of spatial relationships that affect human interaction with their physical environment. An example would be a 10-story building casting a 100-foot shadow off its perimeter. Several of these 10-story, 100-foot walls side by side listed in the proposed opportunity area creates a Manhattan Canyon on both 6th Street and 5th Street. To the south on 6th Street, a 15-story or 150-foot wall project a similar effect. Is this what we want the 6th Street corridor to become? A shaded canyon of concrete and steel from Pearl to Willamette? If approved and over time, it could become just that. I'm a proponent of infill and going vertical to minimize urban sprawl, especially along public transit routes. But where does Eugene put a scale limit on height in relation to our downtown and city size? How much affordable low-income housing will actually be secured in this area, and for how long by expanding from 7 to 10 stories? Will this add more competition to keeping our downtown intact and solvent? Or is this plan to reestablish the downtown from 6th Street to the waterfront, casting off and abandoning the current downtown at the whim and profit of developers? The plan for Eugene's buildable future should be done in a sustainable and all-encompassing way before the proposed height zoning change is allowed. I urge City Council to deny the Skinner Butte height limitation area amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim. President Groves, that was our final speaker.
Very much. Thank you to everyone who spoke. Is there a staff response?
Thank you. Staff won't offer any particular rebuttal, waive our rebuttal, but we are available to answer any questions the council might have either tonight or in advance of the action meeting scheduled.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to rebut any of the offered testimony?
We will waive a rebuttal. Thank you.
Are there any questions that councilors wish to ask of staff? Councilor Leach.
Yes, to the planning staff, could you explain the process for consideration of this land use code amendment and the applicable approval criteria?
Good evening, councilors. My name is Althea Sullivan, Senior Planner with the city's Planning Division. The set of amendments that are in front of you tonight are site-specific, which means that the amendments go through what's called a quasi-judicial process. And what council is being asked to consider is whether to approve with conditions, or deny the amendments based on whether or not they meet the applicable approval criteria. Those criteria are in full in your agenda, as well as findings in your agenda that kind of walk through each of those criteria. But generally speaking, the criteria for approval of a code amendment are looking at whether the code amendment is consistent with the statewide planning goals, and then also looking at whether the amendment is consistent with locally adopted policies and plans. Thanks.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Okay. Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you for everyone who provided testimony tonight. My question, and I should preface this inquiry by indicating I've long been a champion of building up and not out, yet I have environmental concerns, and I'd like staff to walk me through any environmental studies that have been done, especially as they relate to migrating birds around the Butte.
Thank you, Councilor Keating. Dylan Huber Hydorn, Community Development Division. I'm not aware of any studies on that particular topic here. When we looked into sort of the origins of the Skinner Butte height limitation area, it frankly didn't turn up a whole lot. I think the impetus for the height limitation area being put into effect in the first place had to do, as is outlined in the findings, had to do with views to and from the Butte. And we're talking the 60s here. Even with the environmental movement at the time, I think those things have come a long way in terms of understanding those problems. But we could see if there's any particular information that has been turned up regarding migratory bird patterns, anything like that. Don't have any specific information for you this evening.
I appreciate that. I'd welcome that information before making a decision. I recognize the aesthetics piece, and coming to Eugene as a kid, visiting my cousins, have long taken in the beauty from the Butte, but migratory bird, any environmental piece around aviation in particular, or aviation potential issues or any disruption of a migratory pattern, I'd like to take that into consideration before making a decision. I appreciate that. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Councilor Keating. Are there any other councilors that wish to ask questions or comment? Councilor Ye.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to make sure that I am understanding my AIS correctly. So my understanding is that as proposed, the code amendment is not specific to the use of the property, but we could put restrictions if we wanted to. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councilor. Althea Sullivan here again. The proposed code amendments are focused on a building height limitation. They're not focused on the use. And so they wouldn't do anything to update the allowed uses for this area or for the zones. It's really just about the building height.
So hypothetically, if we were like, we're okay with it if it's housing, we've talked a lot about housing. There's no guarantee it could be housing. Could we say we're fine with it if it's housing and otherwise we are not fine with it?
I think that would require additional analysis of the code, and then it would also require additional code updates.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you, Althea.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm seeing none. I will now close the public hearing unless there are any objections from the council.
Council President, I have a question. I am so sorry.
All right, Councilor Clark.
Yeah, I have not read the materials cover to cover, and my question of staff is with regard to is it an appropriate analysis of approval criteria, or is it appropriately approval criteria to talk about or to ask questions about increased capacity of use with the increased height? In other words, more apartments than would be otherwise, or more living units than would otherwise be allowed in a shorter building.
Thank you. That's a great question, and actually something that came up for the Planning Commission based on some testimony. We have some folks that are really interested in making sure the city is looking at housing and Goal 10 findings. And so there are more detailed Goal 10 findings where we talk about housing and our capacity for it. And so it is under the approval criteria, and there are findings there for you.
With regard, and forgive me for not knowing, Goal 10 is infrastructure, is that correct?
Goal 10 is housing.
Okay, I'm asking with specific reference to infrastructure, and I don't know which goal that is off the top of my head. So is it 11? No, it's not, is it? I was thinking 15, but that's not it.
I don't think that infrastructure on a building by building basis is really accounted for in this context of this code amendment that we have and the approval criteria for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Last call. Okay, I will now close the public hearing unless there are any objections from council. I will also close the record for this code amendment.